Hi, I'm Michelle. Welcome to my Quilting Beehive. Today I'm putting together a video to show you how to make the split quarter square triangles that we are using in the 2024 Marvelous Mystery Quilt. If you're not making the Marvelous Mystery Quilt yet, it's not too late to join. There'll be a link below. You can find out all the details if you want to sign up. To make our split quarter square triangles, we will be making lots of them. So we're going to start with our half square triangles that we're going to make 8 at a time. If you need more details on how to make half square triangles 8 at a time, there is another video and I'll put a link to it below as well, and it will show you how to make them. But basically you're going to start with your large squares. I have a square of the black fabric and the white fabric in this case, and you're sewing on the diagonal a 1/4 inch away from the center. So 2 lines this direction, 2 lines the other direction, and then we're going to cut it up. And this happened to be an 11-inch square, so I'm cutting it in half, which is 5.5 inches. And then I'm going to cut it in half the other direction, so 5.5 inches from the edge, and it goes right through the center of my X. And then I'm also going to cut it in half diagonally between those 2 stitch lines. Both ways. And this will give you 8 half square triangles, because each section becomes a half square triangle. So you're going to use those. You're going to make 8 at a time. Each set of 8 will give you 16 of our split quarter square triangles. So I'm going to set those out of the way. You'll press them, and then you will have those ready to go. I have one pressed already here. I pressed towards my darker fabric, and I have a square of the other fabric that we want to use. On the back of that square, you're going to mark it. Here's another one. I like to use the Quilter's Quick 1/4-2 ruler so I can make both lines at the same time. And you line it up so the center of the ruler, you can see the corners diagonally through there. Take your favorite marking pencil. This is a Sew Line mechanical pencil. I thought I was going to need a white pencil, but I found I can see the gray pencil better than the white one. So I'm drawing my line on that side, I'm drawing a line on that side. And so I have my 2 lines marked. Then you're going to take this, and what's important is make sure when you put it on the lines, go the opposite way. So this diagonal line goes horizontal, so I want to make these go vertically so they cross across that. And I'm going to line that up in the center, and then I'll take it over to my sewing machine. When you get to your machine and you have your stack of them ready to go, I like to set it up so I can see, because we pressed to the dark, I have the dark on the bottom, and then I have my marked squares with my lines going the opposite direction. So these are horizontal, this is going to be vertical, lined up above it. And that way you can just take one each time and you can chain piece, because we are making quite a few of these. When you sew, a good tip to follow is, because our seam is going towards the dark, and that's why I put them this way, I want to go through the machine that way so it doesn't get caught up on my feed dogs. I don't have to worry about it getting stuck. So I'm going to line it up. We didn't trim our half square triangles. We left them untrimmed because we're going to add to them, and we can trim at the end. So now I'm just centering my 3rd square on top, and I'm going to sew. And I like to sew just next to the line on the inside of the seam allowance to give me a little extra wiggle room. So I'm lining up my machine right there. Let me point in there. And I can see the line. My needle is going to be just next to the line because my needle's in the center, and I have my line just a little bit under the foot. So I'm going to go right through there. And I'm going to follow that line all the way across. And when I get to the middle, it'll go right over that nice seam allowance because it's going the right direction. It won't get caught. And go right to the end. Now when you get to the end, because we're making so many, chain piece, take the next 2 and repeat the same. My points are on the diagonal, they line up with that seam line. They go right through. And then you can sew your next one, and that saves on thread. You don't have any wasted thread from cutting every one and pulling it out every time. And you just work your way across. And you can go through your whole stack, sew the first seam, and then when you cut it apart, you'll be ready to sew the second seam. And I'm just going to keep going. And again, I want the dark one so the seam allowance won't get caught. And I'm going to bring it over here. And on my foot, I'm using my 1/4 inch foot. I'm just lining up that line so my needle is, now it's just on the inside of it as well. Just barely, like right next to it. And I'll sew down that one. And you're going to just want to keep going through and sewing each one. So you sew both lines, just like when you're sewing 1/4 square triangles, 2 lines, a 1/4 inch from the center diagonal, those marked lines that we did. After you've sewn them all, it'll be time to trim them. We sewed our 2 lines. You can see them better on the back here. You can see I sewed my 2 lines right through. And now I'm just going to take a ruler and I'm going to cut center diagonal between those 2 sewn lines to cut those apart. And what you'll discover when you open them up is they are going to be opposites. You'll have a left and a right. So you can't, if you only need one direction, you can't make 2 at a time because half of them will be, the black and the white end up in opposite positions. The black switches. So you need to make sure if you only need it one direction to make sure you know which ones you're making. For this quilt, we need both directions. We're going to make equal amounts so it works out perfectly that we can use both of them. So you're going to cut them apart and then bring them over to your iron and press towards that triangle. When you get to your iron, just a quick refresher, it's always good to set your seam, which just means you put your iron on and hold it still before you press it open, and that kind of locks those stitches in place, shrinks them up just a tad. So now I'm going to press it open. I'm using the side of my iron up against there to make sure no puckers come, and I just hold it. You don't want to wiggle it too much because that'll stretch the fabric. Just use it to press it open. And the same thing on this side. And there you go. Once you have them all pressed, it'll be time to trim. We are going to trim these to 4.5 inches. I happen to have the Creative Grids 4.5 inch ruler, which works out perfect if you have one. I'll also show you how to do it if you don't have one. But this ruler right in the center, there's a circle showing the center of the ruler, and that's really convenient for this block because you can line that up right on that center point where the 3 triangles touch. And it has this diagonal line that you can put across the seam between the 2 triangles. And if I line that right up there and line that up here, I can quickly and easily trim these 2 sides. And I'm using that mat that rotates on this one, so I can turn it around. Also, if you work at the side of a table, you could walk around to the other side of your table. And careful that it doesn't slip. And trim off just that little bit, and that makes it a perfect 4.5 inch block. Now, if you don't have a 4.5 inch ruler, then that's okay. You can do it with a larger ruler. And here is, I'm using a 6.5 inch one here. So what I want to do now is I still want to line up the diagonal line on here. And then we need to find the center. Now, half of 4.5 is 2.25. So you'll have to go in here, and here's your 2 inch mark. You're going to go another 1/4 inch over and another 1/4 inch over, and that ends up being right there on the ruler. So that's the mark you're going to want to put in your center. So figure out where your mark is. Make sure you know where the 1/4 inch is right there. And you're still lining up this diagonal line across here. And then you're going to trim 2 sides across the top. Take that away, and then you can turn your block around to trim the other 2 sides. You're still lining up the 2.25 inch line, should still be right in the center. And in this case, it's going to be a 4.5 by 4.5 on your two sides that you already trimmed. And make sure that diagonal line is still there so all your pieces will line up and be the same after. Hold your ruler tight, and you can trim the top and the side, and you'll have it just as good. Once you have your pieces all made, we're going to be done for this month with the Marvelous Mystery Quilt. If you're not making the Marvelous Mystery Quilt and you want some ideas of what to do with these blocks, there's lots of options. But one thing you can do with them, which we're not doing with the Marvelous Mystery, so don't be disappointed if you were hoping this was what we're making. But one thing you can do is you can put them all together into these neat little pinwheel blocks. There's lots of other arrangements you can make them. They can go into other blocks and add more pieces to them. But there's lots you can do with them. I hope you have fun making them, and I'd love to see what you come up with of what to do with your blocks. Thanks.